Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome to my fourth episode of my Star Wars watch through. I just got done watching Solo, a Star Wars story, and I'm now going to give you my first thoughts and reactions and analysis on what I thought about the films. Starting off, I kind of wanted to talk about the characters that are portraying already existing Star Wars characters and how they performed in conjunction with their former counterparts. So starting off, I wanted to talk about Han Solo because Han Solo obviously is the main character of this film, so it was very important that he was true to his character and how he's been portrayed in the original trilogy and the new trilogy as well. So I want to say the actor that portrayed Han Solo did very well. I could tell that he had been at least studying the mannerisms of Han Solo and Harrison Ford and how he'd been doing that. I wanted to commend the actor for that. Lando Calrissian, on the other hand, Donald Glover played Lando Calrissian, and I knew that it would be hard to play Lando because of the swagger that actor is just able to portray in the original trilogy. I should say Donald Glover tried his best, but he wasn't quite able to capture that original swagger, but he did a decent job. There was only a few issues I had with Lando's character. Chewbacca, obviously, there was never really an instance where I was like, oh, Chewbacca, that's kind of out of character for Chewbacca, so I want to say that they were able to do that portrayal pretty well. Obviously, the big spoiler, Darth Maul, he was only barely on screen for a little bit, so it would have been hard to portray him falsely, but their portrayal was really cool. It showed an accurate representation of Darth Maul, and he even has the robotic legs, like how he gets at the end of Clone Wars. It's a really cool representation, and it was really cool to see him back on the feature film screen in live action. Now moving on to what I did not like about the film. First thing was probably the thing that irked me the most about the whole movie is L3 and the other droids in this movie. My biggest issue with L3 and the other droids is that they didn't really align with how the other droids kind of are always portrayed in the rest of the films in this series. It's always a gray area where the droids are at, whether they're sentient or not. Before this movie came out, it was always up in the air whether like R2-D2 or C-3PO actually had real intelligence and sentience. So I thought it was done intentionally for them to be left like that, and for that to be a question that was unanswered, when that question was just very, like, they had a droid that was fighting for droid rights and arguing that droids have sentience. When you have that in your film, it kind of went against the themes and how other droids are portrayed in the rest of the saga. That was definitely something that, as someone that likes a very strict canon and then to stick to that, it was something that grinded my gears a little bit. Moving on to another thing I disliked about the films, it's really interesting is that this film has almost two climaxes. There's the point where they get all the spice on Kessel and then they head out of there, do the Kessel Run. After that, there's still another half hour or 20 minutes or something of film, and it is so slow and so boring. The progression is very slow, and during that time, that's when a lot of like the wrapping up of the story takes place. But because it's so like slowly paced, it gets really boring. It makes you almost like want to not watch the film anymore, because after that, they just show up on the planet. There's a lot of talking. They have their confrontation with the main bad guy, and also there's a lot of double crossing during that point. They're like, oh, you should have listened, oh, you should have learned. They probably say you should have learned the lesson like 10 times during that last 30 minutes of the film. The double crossing gets old, and contributing to that as well is the rebel group. I don't even remember what the rebel group's called, but they appear earlier in the film. It's kind of out of nowhere. They're just this marauder group that tries to take the coaxium that the crew is also trying to get from the train, and they come in and swoop it up and end up ruining the whole job, and nobody ends up with the coaxium. So that's their first appearance, and then their second appearance is at the end. It's revealed that they're these heroic characters. They're actually rebelling. They're victims of the Crimson Dawn that have appeared and are creating a rebellion to rebel and sabotage Crimson Dawn. I never really got super interested in these rebel. They just seemed like throwaway characters, and then they appear at the end, and they're very important to the story and the plot apparently now. It's all during that boring part. That whole ending is just full of they're talking with these uninteresting characters, and then they have a big plan with these characters, and they save the day, and they get there, and then it ends up them being the good guys, and then they make a line about, oh, we're the start of the rebellion. And to me, it was not really interesting. It kind of seemed like a total separate entity from the movie itself. The rebel group just seemed detached from the movie, and that's what I really didn't like about it. And then the one last thing I didn't really like about the film is that at the beginning, Han Solo gets his name because the Imperial officer is just like, oh, what's your family? Oh, you don't have a family? Oh, then you're gonna be Han Solo. And it's like, in origin stories, it's really common for origin stories to do a random coincidence to this character that has a really iconic name. And I feel like his name could have been Han Solo, and it would have been less annoying for me. On to stuff I really liked about the film. So I'm gonna start this segment by saying that this film actually really exceeded my expectations. I'd only seen it once before this viewing, and I'd like to say it's much better than I remember. The beginning of the film starts really, really strong. I was really surprised because first, the actor's interpretation of Han Solo is really, really strong at the beginning. And then also his relationship with Qi'ra is revealed at the beginning of the film. And we only see it for a couple of scenes, a couple of shots. And it's very evident that this is a couple that is in puppy love with each other and they want to escape. They're really naive, it's obvious, and it's really well done because they don't tell you, it's shown to us. I think they did a really good job at being able to portray that with just those characters and just seeing how they interact with each other. The actors did a really good job. Specifically the actor that plays Qi'ra, for I guess Daenerys in Game of Thrones, that's what I'm used to seeing her in. She does a really good job and a much better job than what I remember in this film. The relationship between Beckett and Han is really unique and cool. He's a mentor, but they're both bounty hunters that backstab. Beckett teaches Han Solo to backstab, and in the end it costs Beckett his life. It's a really cool transformation, and it wraps up Beckett's arc with his wife and his previous crew being dead, and also wraps up Han's arc because he learns to not take shit from anybody, and he learns the lesson of not to trust people. So he whips out his gun and shoots him before he can even learn that lesson. And he kind of pulls that on Greedo later in the original trilogy. So it's another cool part. And I just wanted to say, this film is what I think an anthology film can bring to the Star Wars universe. It's all about expanding the previous characters we know. It's all about expanding that universe. So there's a lot of cool things that are brought into the Star Wars universe. Even though they're new, it makes sense that they fit in the universe. It just is so believable, and it makes sense that they're there. It's like they have a droid fighting ring. You get to see a cool battlefront on the Imperial side with these new Imperial recruits, and this is very soon after the Republic becomes an empire, so they're not all stormtroopers. They're actually recruited infantrymen, which is super cool to see. That's something that's never really been explored before. And then two new characters that I really particularly liked in this film were Lady Proxima. She's only at the very beginning of the film, and that ties into why I like the beginning of the film so much, but the concept of her is really cool, like a hidden sea monster in the middle of this city that has an entire clan of people that steal for her. It just makes sense in the Star Wars universe, and she looks really cool. And then also Rio. I feel like Rio represents what Jar Jar Binks should have been. It's like a good comic relief from a CGI character that has a unique body build, and either the voice actor or the actor that portrayed him did a really good job. He's so likable that it makes you feel sad when he actually dies, unlike the other female character when Beckett's wife dies. Onto the tier list. So I'm going to be putting up my tier list right now. As it sits right now, I put Revenge of the Sith at number 1, Solo number 2, number 3 is A Phantom Menace, and number 2, Attack of the Clones, is number 4. I just put Solo ahead of Phantom Menace because I feel like altogether it was a better film. The CGI was better, I haven't really mentioned, because there was no issues with the CGI. It all looked really good to me. I'm just not letting my nostalgia for Phantom Menace get in the way, so I'm putting Solo at number 2 and Phantom Menace at number 3. Alright, that's all I had to say. I hope you all have an excellent evening, and I will see you next time.